The air in the underground research facility was heavy, carrying the antiseptic tang of sterilized steel and recycled air. Dr. Lena Hart walked briskly down a dimly lit corridor, the faint hum of machinery vibrating through her boots. This was supposed to be a standard inspection, a routine check to confirm that the facility was adhering to the stringent ethical guidelines for interspecies research. As a xenobiologist with a reputation for holding even the most powerful institutions accountable, Lena had been assigned this task personally by the Interplanetary Ethics Council. She adjusted her glasses, scrolling through the report on her datapad. The documents listed routine procedures, DNA cataloging, biomechanical studies, and harmless behavioral analysis. But something didn't sit right with Lena. There were discrepancies, missing timestamps, classified sections that even her clearance couldn't access. She suspected the facility was hiding something, but what, she didn't know. As she approached the lab marked Sector X7 restricted, her badge blinked red. Access denied, chimed a robotic voice. Lena frowned and pressed the intercom. Dr. Hart, Ethics Council. I have clearance for all sections. There was a pause, followed by the crackling sound of a reluctant reply. One moment, Doctor. The door hissed open, and Lena stepped inside. The lab was unlike the others she'd seen, a stark contrast to the sterile white halls above. Here, the walls were lined with dark, pulsing machinery that seemed more alive than mechanical. In the center of the room stood a cylindrical containment unit. Its translucent walls glowed faintly, and something inside shifted. Lena froze as her eyes adjusted to the dim light. Inside the cylinder was a figure, small, fragile, and utterly alien. The creature's skin shimmered like liquid glass, reflecting faint hues of purple and green. Its eyes were enormous and filled with a swirling cosmos of light, and it emitted a soft, haunting sound that seemed to vibrate in Lena's very bones. What is this? Lena whispered, stepping closer. A sharp voice broke the silence. Doctor, you are not authorized to be here. Lena turned to see a man in a lab coat, Director Merrick, the head of the facility. His face was taut with tension, his eyes cold and unyielding. This is Sector X7. The subject is classified. You're overstepping. I wasn't aware the council approved live subject experimentation, Lena replied, her voice steely. This isn't in any of the reports. It's above your pay grade, Merrick snapped. Now leave. But Lena didn't move. She turned back to the containment unit, locking eyes with the creature. It shifted closer to the glass, raising a delicate, translucent hand to mimic Lena's movement. The haunting sound it emitted grew louder, more desperate. It wasn't just a sound, it was a cry, filled with pain and longing. She's sentient, Lena said, her voice trembling. She's trying to communicate. Merrick stepped forward, blocking Lena's view. The subject is irrelevant. Its vocalizations are meaningless. This is an asset, not a person. Not a person? Lena's voice rose. She's intelligent. I can feel it. And she's suffering. Merrick's expression hardened. If you value your career, Dr. Hart, I suggest you walk away. But Lena couldn't walk away, not now, not ever. As Merrick stared her down, she made a silent promise to the alien girl in the cage. I'll find a way to help you. The alien's cries followed Lena as she left the room, echoing in her ears long after she returned to the sterile white halls above. Little did she know, her life and the fate of countless worlds was about to change forever. Lena couldn't sleep. The alien girl's haunting cries echoed in her mind, replaying in a loop that demanded answers. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those shimmering, star-filled eyes staring back at her, pleading. In the sterile confines of her apartment, Lena pored over her notes, data fragments she'd covertly gathered from the lab. What she had was incomplete, scrubbed clean by Merrick and his team, but it was enough to confirm her suspicions. The girl was no experiment, she was a prisoner. The next day, Lena returned to the facility, her badge granting her access to the main levels. Officially, she was continuing her inspection of the ethical protocols. Unofficially, she was planning her next encounter with the alien girl. She had no illusions about the danger. Merrick's threats were real, and defying him could cost Lena her career or worse. But she couldn't turn away. By the time she reached Sector X7, the facility was quiet. Most staff had gone for the day, leaving the dim corridors feeling hollow and cold. The security cameras were still active, but Lena had carefully planned her route, sticking to blind spots and using an access card she'd borrowed from a sympathetic technician. Inside the lab, the alien girl sat in the containment unit, her glowing skin dimmer than before, her body curled in on itself. The sight of her like that, defeated and silent, made Lena's chest ache. She approached the cylinder slowly, placing her hand on the glass. "Hey," Lena whispered, her voice soft and trembling. "It's me. I'm not here to hurt you." The alien stirred, her luminous eyes flickering open. She straightened slightly, her thin, shimmering hand reaching out to mirror Lena's gesture on the other side of the glass. For a moment, they stayed like that, separated by a barrier but connected in a way Lena couldn't fully explain. "I want to help you," Lena continued. "But I don't know how to understand you. Can you? Can you show me?" The girl tilted her head, her gaze sharp and intelligent. She pressed her forehead against the glass, and Lena felt a strange vibration in the air, like the hum of a distant starship engine. It wasn't sound exactly, it was something deeper, resonating in her mind. Lena gasped as images and feelings flooded her consciousness. She saw a vast nebula filled with stars, planets orbiting in perfect harmony. She felt warmth and unity, a deep connection that bound Sila's people together. Then, the vision shifted: cold steel walls, shadowy figures in uniforms, and the unbearable isolation of the cage. Lena stumbled back, overwhelmed, her breathing ragged. "You're telepathic," Lena murmured, her voice shaking with realization. "You're sending me your memories." The alien girl nodded, her expression softening. Lena sat down on the floor, her back against the containment unit. For hours, she stayed there, asking questions and receiving images, emotions, and faint tones in response. She learned the girl's name was Sila, a member of a race called the Luminal, beings capable of profound empathic connections. Sila had been taken from her home by raiders and sold to the Interstellar Consortium. She didn't understand why, only that her captors feared her abilities and kept her isolated. Lena shared her own story in turn, speaking aloud while Sila listened. She told her about Earth, about her passion for understanding alien life, and about the ethical failures she'd witnessed in her career. As she spoke, Sila emitted soft, harmonious tones, as if responding to Lena's words with a melody of comfort and understanding. In that quiet exchange, a bond began to form. Lena realized that Sila wasn't just a scientific curiosity or a victim to be rescued. She was a person, a deeply feeling, intelligent being who had been robbed of her freedom. By the time Lena left the lab that night, she had made a decision. She would find a way to free Sila, no matter the cost. For the first time in years, Lena felt something she had long forgotten: hope. But as she walked back through the silent corridors, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her. Merrick wasn't the kind of man to let disobedience go unnoticed, and Lena knew her time was running out. The dim lighting of the facility cast elongated shadows across the cold metal walls. For the past week, Lena had been meticulously planning, every moment of her day split between pretending to comply with Merrick's oversight and working in secret to free Sila. The task seemed impossible: a lone scientist against one of the most secure facilities in the galaxy, but Lena knew she couldn't fail. Sila's life depended on it. The plan was simple in theory, but fraught with risk. The city's power grid would undergo a scheduled maintenance window, causing a brief blackout. Lena had worked with a technician named Jorn, an old friend with a shared disdain for the unethical practices at the facility, to extend the outage by a few crucial minutes. It was during this window that she and Sila would make their escape. Lena approached the lab just before midnight, her heart pounding. She wore a slim utility vest lined with stolen access cards, EMP disruptors, and a compact neural blaster non-lethal, but enough to disable guards if necessary. Her hands trembled as she swiped the borrowed access card, holding her breath until the door slid open. Sila was waiting for her, her luminous eyes glowing faintly in the darkness. Her form looked even more delicate than before, but her presence exuded a quiet strength. "It's time," Lena whispered, pressing her hand to the glass. Sila stood, her bioluminescent skin pulsing faintly as if in acknowledgement. The cylinder was designed to be impregnable, but Lena had uncovered a vulnerability in its power supply during her inspections. She attached a small EMP disruptor to the base, and with a sharp click, the cylinder's systems powered down. The glass walls slid open with a soft hiss. Sila stepped out cautiously, her shimmering form a stark contrast to the sterile lab. "You're free," Lena said, her voice barely above a whisper. Sila emitted a low, harmonic tone gratitude mixed with trepidation. Lena gestured for her to follow, and together, they slipped into the corridor. The power outage hit precisely on time, plunging the facility into darkness. Emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a dim, red glow. Alarms hadn't sounded yet, but Lena knew it was only a matter of time. The first obstacle was the guard patrol. Two figures in heavy armor emerged from a side corridor, their visors glowing faintly in the dim light. Lena motioned for Sila to stay back, then stepped into view, feigning a casual demeanor. "Dr. Hart," one of the guards asked, raising a hand to halt her. "What are you doing here during a power outage?" "Checking on Sector X7, Lena replied smoothly. "Protocol requires the lead xenobiologist to secure the live specimens during dash." Before she could finish, Sila emerged from the shadows, her glowing form impossible to miss. The guards froze for a split second, stunned by the sight of her. It was all Lena needed. She fired the neural blaster, the blue arcs of energy striking the guards in quick succession. Both crumpled to the ground, their suits short-circuited. "Let's go," Lena hissed, grabbing Sila's hand. The two moved quickly through the labyrinthine corridors, dodging patrols and slipping through maintenance tunnels Lena had memorized during her inspections. Each step felt like a lifetime, the weight of the mission pressing down on her. Sila's faint, musical tones followed her like a mantra, grounding her in the chaos. As they reached the facility's outer perimeter, the alarms finally blared. "Breach in Sector X7, a voice shouted over the intercom. The sound of boots echoed down the halls, drawing closer. "We're out of time," Lena muttered. She led Sila to a loading bay where an unmarked cargo ship waited. Jorn had risked everything to smuggle it in, clearing the flight logs and leaving it fueled for their escape. A security team appeared at the far end of the corridor, shouting and raising their weapons. Lena fired the neural blaster, buying precious seconds as she and Sila climbed into the ship. The engines roared to life as Lena activated the controls, her hands flying over the console. "Hold on!" Lena yelled as the ship lifted off, the facility shrinking behind them. The escape wasn't over yet. Facility patrol ships launched in pursuit, their lights piercing through the darkness of the city's upper atmosphere. Lena pushed the ship to its limits, dodging incoming fire and weaving through the towering skyscrapers of New Terra. Sila sat silently in the co-pilot seat, her hands pressed against the console. Suddenly, Lena felt a strange hum in the air, a vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "What are you doing?" Lena asked, glancing at Sila. Sila's eyes glowed brightly as she emitted a resonant tone. Ahead of them, space seemed to ripple and twist. A wormhole formed a swirling vortex of light and energy. Lena had read about such phenomena in theoretical physics, but had never seen one in action. "Is that you?" Lena whispered. Sila nodded, her expression calm despite the chaos around them. Lena gritted her teeth and plunged the ship into the wormhole just as the patrol ships closed in. For a moment, everything went silent. The ship was enveloped in a kaleidoscope of light, time and space bending around them. Then, with a jarring lurch, they emerged into a new star system. Ahead of them was a breathtaking nebula, its vibrant hues of blue, gold, and violet illuminating a cluster of planets. Lena stared in awe, her heart pounding. "We made it," she whispered, turning to Scylla. "We're free." Scylla reached out and touched Lena's hand, her touch warm and comforting. In that moment, Lena knew they were more than allies. They were bonded, their fates intertwined in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. But one thing was certain, their journey was far from over. The ship drifted through the nebula, bathed in the radiant hues of distant stars. Lena's eyes scanned the viewscreen in awe, her scientific mind racing to comprehend the beauty before her. Vast fields of gas and light stretched infinitely, and in the distance, clusters of planets orbited a massive blue sun. But her attention returned to Scylla, who sat quietly, her luminous skin glowing brighter than Lena had ever seen. "Is this it?" Lena asked, her voice hushed. "You're home?" Scylla nodded and emitted a melodic hum, a sound that resonated in Lena's chest. It was a tone of joy and relief, a cry that carried across the ship's hull. Lena watched as Scylla raised her hands toward the view screen, and in response, one of the planets in the distance began to glow faintly, as if answering her call. Lena adjusted the ship's course, guiding it toward the illuminated world. As they descended through its atmosphere, Lena marveled at the sight below, a world teeming with life. Rivers of liquid light coursed through vast, crystalline valleys, and floating islands drifted lazily in a golden sky. Massive trees with iridescent leaves shimmered as they swayed in an unseen breeze. Before long, the ship landed in a clearing surrounded by towering spires of crystal. As Lena and Scylla stepped out onto the surface, a chorus of musical tones filled the air. Figures emerged from the surrounding landscape, their forms as radiant and ethereal as Scylla's. They moved gracefully, their bioluminescent bodies glowing in sync with one another, creating a symphony of light and sound. One of the beings approached, taller and older looking than the rest. Their presence exuded authority and wisdom. Scylla rushed forward, embracing them in a display of pure emotion. Lena could feel the wave of relief and joy radiating from the reunion, even without words. "Lena," Scylla said softly, turning to her. It was the first time she had spoken her name aloud, the sound a harmonious blend of tones. The older being looked at Lena with deep, star-filled eyes, then emitted a melodic phrase. Scylla translated through a series of images and feelings. "They thank you," Scylla explained. "For bringing me home. For answering my cry." Lena felt a lump rise in her throat. "I couldn't just leave you there." The elder gestured, and Scylla took Lena's hand, leading her deeper into the crystalline forest. As they walked, Scylla explained her people's plight. The Luminal were peaceful beings, thriving on their deep empathic connections to each other and the universe. But they had become targets of slavers and interstellar syndicates, their unique abilities coveted as commodities. Scylla's abduction was part of a larger, sinister pattern, one that had left many of her people scattered or enslaved. Lena listened intently, her resolve hardening. "We have to do something. This can't keep happening." The elder spoke again, and Scylla translated. "They say your actions have already started something. Others are listening now." It wasn't long before Lena understood what Scylla meant. Word of their escape and Scylla's return had spread through the galactic networks, drawing the attention of interstellar ambassadors and activists. Within days, representatives from neighboring star systems began arriving on the Luminal homeworld. They came not just to witness the Luminal's remarkable abilities, but to hear Lena's story and her plea for change. In a grand, crystalline chamber, Lena stood before a gathering of beings from across the galaxy. Scylla stood by her side, her presence a beacon of hope and unity. Lena spoke passionately about her experiences, about the need for ethical reform in interstellar trade, and the importance of protecting sentient beings from exploitation. "This isn't just about one girl," Lena said, her voice steady. "It's about all of us. About what kind of galaxy we want to live in. We have a choice to look away or to act." Scylla stepped forward then, raising her arms. A resonant hum filled the chamber, and for a moment, every being present felt the depth of her emotions, her pain, her hope, her determination. The room fell silent, awash in the collective understanding of Scylla's message. The ambassadors began to speak in turn, pledging to work together to combat the exploitation of sentient life and dismantle the networks responsible for it. Lena felt a flicker of hope, knowing this was only the beginning of a long journey, but a journey worth taking. That night, as the crystalline city glowed softly under the golden sky, Lena sat with Scylla on the edge of a floating island. The stars above seemed closer here, their light reflecting in the tranquil rivers below. "You've changed everything," Lena said, looking at Scylla. Scylla shook her head gently and touched Lena's hand. "We changed everything. Together." As Lena gazed at the horizon, she felt something she hadn't in years, a profound sense of purpose. She had found her place in the universe, not as a scientist or an observer, but as a protector of those who needed her most. And somewhere in the depths of space, the cries of the caged and the forgotten were finally being answered.